Last time we talked about the brain and the learning brain. We talked about many interesting points about the brain and how the brain learns. We talked about how memories are formed, how our memories work, what gets in first, what are the priorities for our memories, and we talked about this in a sense, a scientific sense, something that we have just learned very recently. And now we're going to talk about teaching techniques. Today we're going to talk about the basics. Next time we'll talk about actual strategies and techniques. When we talk about the basics, we talk about what is old and what is new. What has been a theory before and what is now being proven using science and our knowledge of the brain. And we'll try to relate these two together as we move along throughout today's session. We're going to discuss these 12 points in brief. Number one, we're going to talk about how to create the proper environment in our classroom, because this is the basis of any teaching technique being successful, to have an environment where everybody wants to learn and everybody can learn. Exactly, yes. Some of these points are very similar to what we did before, but today we want to try to focus on them in light of what we know now from brain research. Second thing is we're going to remember Bloom's taxonomy. We're going to revisit it again because it does apply to any teaching technique. Remember that you don't teach a subject, you teach students. And then we're going to talk about some basic techniques here. First of all, building on prior knowledge and why this is now especially important now that we know how memories are formed in our brains. Using closure, the end of the lesson. Using adaptations. Planning connections to outside of what I'm teaching. Using homework wisely. Being brain-friendly as a teacher and choosing strategies that are friendly to the ways our brains work. Giving synapse, like we said before, we're going to discuss what that means exactly. And the use of rehearsal and the two different types of rehearsal and how we must use both and when. And then some tips to consider, and we'll open the discussion on these 12 points together at the end. So, we'll start with number one, creating the proper environment. In order for learning to be effective, we need to have a proper environment for our students. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a very famous hierarchy of the basic needs of human beings. Maslow is a psychologist, and this has been applied to learning, to teaching for a very long time. However, it has always been a theory that is being put into practice, and we see that it is effective, but only now can we really prove that this is, in fact, how our brains do work and how our students do work. Basically, to go from each step to the other, we must first pass the step before. That's why it's in the shape of a pyramid, and it goes from bottom to top. First of all, the first step, the basis, is the biological and physiological needs. We must satisfy our biological needs first before we are able to learn anything. And so if I have my children in classroom, we were talking last time, if you remember, we had a discussion about eating and drinking in classroom, and some teachers agree, some do not. However you look at it, if they are hungry or they are thirsty or they really need to use the toilet, for example, they will not be able to move to the next level. So how do I work around it? Well, there are many ways to do so. One way is just to have firm rules about what you allow and what you don't allow in the classroom, and then help them adapt themselves to the rules. So for example, if my lesson is right after break time, and they come after break time wanting to eat in my lesson, then they need to know that there's a rule that says, in my classroom you can't eat. Now you have break time, you need to eat at the beginning of break time. Well, I always play during break time, and then by the time I'm finished, the bell rings. Well, then you need to change your strategy. You need to eat first and then play. Even if you risk one or two lessons where the student's sitting down not understanding anything, but in order for him to learn later on to, be sure to eat or drink during break. Or in the morning have breakfast or whatever, the way that suits your individual class. Afterwards are safety needs. They need to be safe, they need to feel safe. And once they don't feel safe, you're not able to teach them as well. So therefore, I have to address their safety needs. Safety needs, of course, could be physical safety, or it could be emotional safety. Things like jealousy, things like bullying, things like having some kind of quarrel or a fight with somebody and trying to think about what's going to happen during the lesson. All of this is something that is threatening to my safety as a student. And I need to be sure that I am safe first before I can go on to the next steps. Now, as a teacher, I need to make sure that my students feel safe. I need to be the policeman in my classroom. I need to enforce the rules in my classroom. I need to make them confident that if something is threatening their safety, or if someone is threatening their safety, I'm there to protect them. It is my job to make sure that they are safe and well in my classroom. Belongingness and love means we all need to feel that we belong to a group or that we are loved by the people who are around us. In the classroom, this basically means the friends, the peers, the other students, and the teacher. If the student feels that he belongs or she belongs to the classroom, she belongs to this class, they're a family, she or he loves the teacher and the teacher loves them back, there's this relationship between them all, then we can go on to the next steps. If they feel left by themselves, if they feel that they are left out of the group, everybody else is getting along together and I'm the only one who's away, then there's no way they're going to be able to learn unless we first address this point. Esteem needs are basically the need to feel confidence and achievement within. So esteem needs is for me to feel that I am confident, to feel that I am capable of doing what I want to do from within me. And this is something we teach them. This is something we want them to reach. We want them to know that they are capable of doing what we ask them to do. Within them, they have this potential and they have this confidence. The final step, self-actualization, is when this confidence or these esteem needs that we gave them actually translate into reality, where they actually achieve, where they actually pass with good grades, where they actually perform, problem solve, think critically, make projects, create things, where they actually implement the esteem needs and the confidence that they have. And these are the two things that teachers basically address. We can't be able to reach those two without first passing by the three before. In Bloom's taxonomy, we talked about how to deliver learning properly. If we want our students to learn with every sense they have and with their whole brains, we need to be able to address all of these points: remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. The more we go up the pyramid, the harder it becomes, and it becomes more of our goal. So basically, almost anyone can teach anyone to remember something. Okay, you don't even need to teach. You just have a paper with some facts. You just need to read it over and over and over again, and you may remember the facts. But it takes a teacher to explain so you can understand. Then it takes someone to guide you to apply what you've understood into real life. And then someone also to help you be able to analyze, break things down into little parts and make connections. And then someone to help you, teach you how to evaluate, how to judge, how to say which is right, which is wrong, which is better, why should it have been this way and not that way. And finally, a teacher to teach you how to create, how to make, how to form from the information that you know, understand, practiced by applying, by analyzing, and by evaluating, how to use all this knowledge to create, to make something that wasn't there in the first place.
The majority of students stop at the third level.
Yes, that is true. But is it the majority of the students or the majority of teachers? Which do you think? Is it something the students just do, they stop here, or do the teachers stop here?
No, I think it's students. They don't want to. مش عارفة what's wrong with the kids. Whatever you do, when you try to make them analyze things, I don't know. They just want the easy way. They want to remember.
Yes.
When you give them something to solve or to analyze and to evaluate, what they want to answer is to remember.
Yes. But this is also, I think, the responsibility of teachers, not just us, but the teachers who've been teaching them before, the system as a whole. Just focusing on that what you need to learn is the information, and the test is going to be on just remembering the information. We don't give them enough practice or enough tests or enough explanation on how we actually use this, whereas these last three are the most
Even
important.
Math,
this is what we want.
Even in math, what they do is they remember the rule and they apply it, and that's
yes,
it.
that's true. But again, it's my responsibility in a way. Why? If I give them a test at the end of the year, which only requires to know the rule, then why would they want to analyze, evaluate, or create? They won't, because they know that this is how you're going to ask it. This is how the test is going to be. This is the only knowledge that they really need to know. But try to apply this to real life, they won't be able to, because they only know how to use an equation to solve a problem. They don't know how to do this in real life. So teachers must concentrate here. The problem is sometimes we put so much effort to getting up here that we just stop there. We say, okay, that's enough. When we plan our lessons, that's why. Today we're talking about teaching techniques. And when I choose the technique I'm going to teach with whatever technique it is, it's a lecture, I'm going to use worksheets, I'm going to use role play, I'm going to use anything. Okay, any of the strategies we're going to talk about next time. Whatever you choose, it has to have all of these. But it should focus more on the ones where they need extra help. This is where they actually need me to guide them. Remembering, understanding, and applying may not be that important. Something I should do really quickly, make sure they understand the information and remember it, and then focus my lesson on the harder parts, the parts where they need me to assist them. So always keep Bloom's taxonomy in front of you. When you're planning your lessons, make sure that I'm able to reach all of these points, especially focusing on the points where I know they are not used to reaching. They just want to remember, understand the basic information, and apply it on questions that are directly related to what I'm teaching. But can they analyze? Can they break it down into its little parts? Can they compare? Can they evaluate and judge whether this was right or wrong and why? Can they create something similar to it? Can they make a project from scratch that has to do with it? Can they direct a play, for example, that emphasizes what they're taking in history in a way where they can choose all the details? Can they or can't they? This is what I really need to focus on. Here are some verbs to help you when you try to plan your lessons and want to include all of the steps of Bloom's taxonomy. Because sometimes it's not really clear what I should do in order to address all of the points or most of the points. So these are some verbs that we usually use as questions, or we use for ourselves or in the lesson plans. So remembering would be something like define, give me a definition. List, give me a list, 1, 2, 3. Memorize this rule. Understanding, you need to classify things, so put all of the mammals together, and put all of the reptiles together, classify them, group them. Describe, which is basically another form of remembering, but give you more details. Don't just give me the fact, describe it in more details. Discuss it, let's talk about it, but what's going back and forth is just basic information about what we're taking. Explain to me, so again, remember information, but in more details. Then the next step, apply by demonstrating. Show me, don't just tell me. I want you to show me what happened. So maybe if you're in a history class, for example, and you're teaching something that has to do with the Second World War, like you were saying last time. And then I say, okay, I want to know what happened exactly in the Second World War. Who started, what were the 2 campaigns, what happened, who won, what were the most famous battles, for example. Maybe they just remember, they just memorize, so they just go ahead and say all the information. But when I say apply, I say demonstrate or dramatize, show me. Giving them little objects, little flags for each of the countries, for example, and show me what happened. Make the play. Here's a table, now show me. Who started with who was here, who won who. Show me in action. If they really understand, they'll be able to show, to explain. And this is what we do as teachers. We don't just know information and relate it. We must explain it. So we use the application step when we try to explain things. We want them to use this as well and explain. Demonstrate, dramatize, do it as a play. Employ, use the information that you know to do something else or to apply it to something else. Interpret. I'm going to give you, for example, a passage from a letter written by a soldier in the Second World War to someone else. You've done that, yes. Obviously. Okay. And I need you to interpret why he said this or why she said this. When do you think that was? Which battle was that? Why did he say so? What does that prove? This is all application. And here's where we usually stop it. Say. So let's go further down. Now analyze. Okay, compare. Contrast. Tell me the similarities and the differences between this battle and that battle, between this country and that country, between this perspective and that perspective. Okay? Compare them, contrast them, criticize them. Why were they right? Why were they wrong? What should they have done? Differentiate. What is the difference? They seem very similar, but there are little differences. What do you think they are? Evaluating, you might have to argue. Now you want to argue, you have to prove to the class. You think Hitler was an excellent person. Somebody thinks so. Hitler was great.
Most of the boys.
He was right. Most of the boys, okay, would think that he was perfectly right in everything he did. Okay, argument, defend, judge, come up in front of class and explain to them why you think so.
Say why. Exactly. You can say whatever you want as long as you say why.
Exactly. Give me proof. Say whatever you want. I'll accept anything, but give me the proof you need. The proof is not found in the information that they remembered or understood or analyzed.
Yes, I know.
It's only when they have the whole picture where they are able to evaluate. Create, after we've done, okay, assemble, make, construct, build, create, design, develop something that was not there at all.
This is when they become like news.
Okay, this is the problem. And what happens is, what we usually don't help them enough. Where we say, okay, I want you to create a project, I want you to create a timeline, for example, related to the Second World War. And we kind of leave it there. Sometimes we do elaborate more, I'm sure both of you do, but some people don't. And then they really don't know what to do. They think of all their previous experiences, because again, we need to connect new learning to old learning. So if you don't tell them what to do, they connect it to what they already know. So projects before meant getting a big sheet of paper, cardboard, and then taking some pictures of the Second World War, sticking them, writing some titles, and just coloring it and making it look nice, writing my name and hanging it. That's it. But what did I make? Nothing. Okay, nothing. What I did was classifying, describing. I'm here, I'm still here. Okay, I only did it visual. But here I wanted to assemble and construct or create something from scratch that shows all of the details. It shows the actions happening and shows your point of view and your judgment. And I need to help them step by step. I need to make it really detailed so that they know exactly what they need to do, what they need to make. They can make a play. They can use puppets, for example. Some of them are very talented. They can sing, they can write a poem, they can do whatever it is that they feel they are capable of doing in proper sense, but create something that was not there. Perhaps even create fictional, a story that doesn't exist, a war that does not exist, between two countries that do not exist. Make it up, okay? But use the information that you've learned here and apply it to this thing that you're going to create and show us how. If you don't teach a subject to teach students. I remember we said this story before. The new teacher, chemistry teacher, was very proud of himself for being an expert at chemistry. And when he asked the older teacher, he told her, "What do you teach?" "I teach chemistry." Because she's experienced, she said, "I teach students." And that's the moral of the story is I'm teaching them, people, the students, these actual students. I'm not just teaching the subject to anyone. So I have to plan my lessons for my students, not for myself. It's not about what I'm going to be doing, it's about what they will learn and what they will do. Now, of course, when I plan my lesson, it's about me in a sense because I'm the one who's going to deliver the lesson. But I need to plan my lesson and then reread it again from the perspective of my students. Get out of the box, stand outside, look at the classroom from above. I know what I'm going to do as a teacher. What about them? What are they going to be doing? Should they be taking notes? Should they be answering questions? Should they be discussing? Should they be raising their hands? Should they be focusing? Are they going to be bored? Or are they going to be interested? Is there going to be group work? What are they going to be doing the whole time? Make sure all students can participate. Because if not every single one is participating, I have two problems. The first problem, the person who is not participating feels left out and just drifts away and it's really hard to get him back. And then the students who are participating, but are a little bit reluctant, give themselves an excuse. Because somebody else is not participating and it's okay with the teacher. So maybe I will not participate anymore. I will not work as well. Maybe today I'll work, maybe tomorrow, no, we didn't really care, so I'm not really going to work today. Maybe day after tomorrow, same thing, and so on. So it really gets worse. If not everybody is working, you don't demand that everybody works, it starts getting much harder. Do not plan to lecture continuously for a long time. As we said before, long lectures for the whole session. Most students will lose focus. They can only focus pretty much for 15 to 20 minutes at a time on something interesting. Exactly. Address your students' learning styles. Make sure you know what their learning styles are, and make sure that you teach them according to their learning styles. If they learn visually by seeing, auditory learners, they learn by hearing, or kinesthetic learners, they learn by doing, and there are other types as well, but these are the three basic ones. Make sure that I'm reaching them with their learning style. So if I'm in a class where all of them, or most of them are visual learners, it doesn't make sense for me to just stand up and lecture the whole lesson. I know they learn visually. I need to use pictures, I need to use diagrams, I need to use posters, I need to use things that they can see. Include all levels of Bloom's taxonomy and try to include them always in order. This is something we sometimes make as a mistake in our classrooms. We say, okay, the point is for me to get all of the 6 things that Bloom talked about and put them into my lesson plan. No, you have to put them in order, because they can't create something unless they first are able to analyze it, and they can't do anything unless they know the information and remember it. So I need to go in order. At the beginning of the lesson, I produce the information, they remember it. I elaborate, they understand. I use quizzes, worksheets, questions, discussions that makes them apply, then analyze, then we have them judge, and then finally we have them debate. It doesn't have to be in the same lesson. It could be the plan of the chapter or the unit. I start gradually until I reach my final goal, which is the last level of the book. Building a prior knowledge. And now we start to talk of things that are related to our brainstorming. Number 1, we must know their prior knowledge. And if you remember before we spoke about this, the formative assessments, I need to know what they know. I can't simply assume that they know certain information because they're in 10th grade or because they should have taken this last year. Because we know very well, and we know for sure, that not everything that they were taught last year, they still remember now. Sometimes what they're taught today, they forgot tomorrow. So I can't rely on their grades from last year. Because what usually happens is that we cram information into our heads right before the test. So we study so hard, we go and test. Some of them could have excellent grades, but they simply don't remember anything. Or maybe what the way they were learning last year, or not maybe, probably the way they were learning last year, was by focusing on the first 2 or 3 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, where they only know the information, but don't really know how to use the information. So I really need to know this before I start something in order to judge on what they know. Now, when we did this before the formative assessment, progressive formative assessment, we had a written sheet, a written questionnaire where we asked them questions, and we go gradually from what we are sure they know, to what they probably know, to what we don't know whether they know or not, to what they probably do not know. It just keeps on getting harder. So that at the end I can actually tell what the level of most of my students are. However, is it practical to use a progressive formative assessment in form of a questionnaire or a sheet or a worksheet every single chapter, every single unit, or every single new topic? No, it's really hard. So I need to improvise by choosing questions, discussion, oral questions, to start with the lesson, to give me feedback on what they know already. So choose your questions wisely and make your questions go gradually from really easy to really hard. So let's say we're talking about the example of Second World War now. Let's say we want to introduce the Second World War, and it's like the first unit having to do with that time or with the war. I start with a very simple question.
What is war?
What is war? Do you know what war is? Because you may be surprised that somebody doesn't know what war is. They are young kids, they've never been physically in a war, they don't watch the news, they maybe really don't know what a war is, or they know that war means fighting, but they don't know what it actually means. So do you know what a war is? What is a war? Okay, we have a discussion about that. Okay, what are the most famous 3-4 wars in history? Let's see if they can name the Second World War as one or not.
Sometimes they don't know that there were only 2 world wars.
They think there were 5 or 6.
3 or 4.
Okay, so maybe it's a good question to ask what were the most famous 3. Okay, because now you want to know, are they going to say the First and the Second and the Third World Wars? Or are they going to say the First World War, the Second World War, and I don't know what else, something like that. Okay, so now I know that they know there's such a thing called the Second World War. Okay, Second World War. What year was it exactly? This is very hard. Okay, most people don't know what year it was exactly. When did it start, when did it end? Okay, we can actually disagree on that. But the point is, almost when was the Second World War? And give them choices. Was it in the 1900s, 1910, for example? Was it 1860, or was it 1940, or was it 1999?
I start first by asking the question, and when I find them not sure, I start giving some answers.
Okay, some choices, exactly. So I can start by asking the question. But the point is here, as you ask these questions, you start to know the information that they know. What we sometimes do wrong here when we try to do this exercise, 2 things. Number 1, we do not actively observe everybody in the classroom. We're really focused on the answer, to the ones who want the answer, and we get the answers, and then we think everybody understands. But we don't realize that there are some people who did not answer. I need to ask these students, I need to go a little bit easier with them, so I can know what they know. So now I know who's answering knows everything, but what about the other ones? Since they didn't say anything, I don't know. Are they just embarrassed? Do they know but are confused, or they don't know at all?
Sometimes shouting the answers that doesn't let the others understand.
Exactly. And the second thing is is that sometimes I rely on this information that now everybody else understands. And this is wrong. I'm asking to know what they know, but I'm not teaching them yet. So I can't just get an answer, okay, the Second World War was in the 1940s, for example. Okay, so it was 1940s. Okay, very good. And then I move on and I don't say it was in the 1940s later on. They didn't understand this information because I didn't teach it. It was something that was said. They're not even sure if that answer was right or wrong. So I can't rely on this as learning, and I need to observe everybody in the classroom so it can be effective. Unless you want to use a sheet where they answer the questions and then you can look at it later on. This is progressive formative assessments that we just talked about. Here, linking new learning to previous learning is essential. Informing connections between neurons, which is basically the memory. Remember, like we said last time, our memories are not stored in the neurons and that's it. No, our memory is formed when many neurons connect together to make, like the orchestra, to make the music, to make sense. This is a memory. So in order to make this memory happen and to make the learning happen, I need to link, I need to connect the information I'm teaching them, the learning that I'm giving them with the previous learning, with what they know from before. So it's essential to know what they know before in order for me to be able to connect. Because if I don't know first, I will assume things and link my lesson plans and link everything to that information, hoping that they know what that means. And then at the end, I discover that they simply don't understand it because that link is broken. It's not connected to anything. For example, sometimes you may think the war in, let's say, where in Iraq. Most of our high school students were old enough then to realize what happened. So I assume that they know what happened, and I start linking my new information to that war. But then I realized that some of them actually have no idea what that is. They don't even know that there's a country that exists in Somalia. And so what I just did was completely useless. So I need to first know what they know in order for me to be able to devise my lessons. Use closure. It is so important that I leave sufficient time for the closure of my lesson. I have to have enough time to wrap everything up. I have to. It's like think of it this way. You want to get some presents, gifts to someone very dear to you. And you spend so much time in the store, choosing the gifts, choosing the presents, choosing the bags, choosing everything. And then suddenly you realize that you don't have time. You just throw everything into the bags and go give it to that person. Don't you want to wrap it up so that it looks nice in a nice box and gift wrap? That's what I want. I need to wrap it up so that they leave with something closed, not something with lots of pieces of information everywhere that I don't know how to connect. So closure is so important. Now, how can we do this? There are many ways to do this. One very good way is to set for yourself an alarm, a reminder, on your phone, in your head, on your watch. If you have a presenter that you're using, some of them you can set a time where it vibrates. Something to tell you, you have 5 minutes left. You have 10 minutes left. Stop whatever you are doing right now. And whatever you've reached, close it. Wrap it up. Don't try to think, okay, I have 5 minutes left, so I still have 2 more pages to do. I'll do them really quickly, then I'm going to summarize it. What happens is they're not going to understand the 2 pages that you just did, and all you've been doing so far may be lost because it hasn't been wrapped up in a box.
This is actually
okay. Yes, it does happen to everyone. But if we really know the importance of it and we do set this reminder for ourselves, it's very useful, very beneficial. This part of the lesson should summarize the lesson. So I need to go over the key information again. And I need to connect the information to other important parts of the curriculum. So here, I connect it to other things that we've already learned. To what we learned yesterday, to what we learned last week, last month, to what we're going to learn next lesson, next quarter. I need to give them connections that what we're learning today is not something separate from what we're learning this year, or what you're learning in general in math or science or whatever subject I'm teaching. No, it's all related to each other, and I'm teaching you why it's related to each other. It is a chance to form as many connections as possible in the student's brain. Closure is a very good chance where you can connect all of the points that you've taught today to as many as possible other neurons in the brains of your students. So whatever gets lost, whatever connections do not form overnight until next day, there's something else to help. Of course, here we're going to take this in another slide, but let's just hint at it really quickly. Remember from last time we talked about the primacy recency effect and how the ending of the lesson is a part where the brain becomes active more than in the middle of the lesson. So here I also need to make use of this. The closure of the lesson, the final moments of my lesson are very important. The brain is very active there. I need to make use of it to summarize, not to teach them something new that I don't have time to elaborate. Use adaptations. Adaptations, the meaning of the word adaptation, if you think of it, is first you have something. You can't adapt something unless it's already there. But then you change it so that it suits the goal you want. What am I going to adapt? I'm going to adapt my plan, my lesson plan. So first I have a plan. I know what I'm going to do exactly. After I have this plan, it has to be ready and working for everybody. It has bloom sticks on it and everything, and I know exactly what I'm going to do. Then I focus on the students that need an adapted plan. They need a plan that will be changed slightly to suit them in particular. Adaptations should be made for students who are either well above or below average. Basically, our generic lesson plans that one size fits all, works for the average student, for the normal student. But those who are well above average or below need some kind of adaptations. They need some kind of special considerations in my lesson plan. I need to give the ones who are well above more challenging questions, extra work to do, something that reaches their level. I need to give the ones who are below average challenging work as well, so that they don't think that I've lost hope. But I need to give it to them gradually. I don't want to give them something too hard so that they don't work at all. I need to focus on these students especially, the ones who are above average and the ones who are below average. And decide how you will approach particular students during the lesson. If I have particular students, 2, 3, 4 students in my classroom by name, and I know they will cause a problem for some reason, I need to plan in my lesson plan adaptations, changing some things for them especially. Having them as my helpers for the day. Having them distribute the papers and getting them back. Having someone act as my timekeeper, for example, and telling me exactly when 10 minutes have passed. Having someone help me here with the board and act out the situation with me. Have someone do something with me. Give extra work to someone, give a responsibility to someone. Somebody I'm going to praise very early on during the lesson. Somebody I'm going to embarrass slightly at the very beginning of the lesson because I know it's going to cause a problem otherwise, and I know this is a way to solve the problem. Things like that. Seven, plan outside connections. Now, what does it mean here, plan outside connections? Plan outside connections basically means that I should decide on how I will connect my lesson to other subjects and to your students' lives. And this sometimes is very hard, because what we've done so far, we've connected what you're teaching them to what they already know about this particular topic. So I'm teaching them the Second World War. Now, how am I going to connect what they know about the Second World War to what we already took before the First World War? That's what I'm doing now. Or parts of the same lesson together. Then afterwards, we said in the closure, connect it to other parts of the curriculum. So connect it to the unit on First World War. Connect it to the unit where we were talking about Germany in a separate unit altogether. Connect it to what we're going to learn next year in history when we're going to talk about the United States and how it affects the world. Things like that. Now, what about here? Outside connections. Now, I don't just want to connect the learning to the subject or to the topic. I want to connect it to outside of my subject. Either to other subjects, connected to English, to math, to science, to whatever other subjects, or to your students' lives, to their actual lives. How does this affect you? How does it help you? How does it benefit you? Of course, because this is personal, so it's very relevant to them. Once something is personal, they learn it right away, because this is our human nature. Our nature, in a way, is that we are selfish. We care about ourselves, and we care about things that are related to us. But things that are not related to us really don't make that much of a difference. So if you're not discussing the Second World War, but rather you're discussing a war that's happening right now, and thousands of people being killed right now, but I'm hungry, I'm going to focus on being hungry, not on the people dying due to the war, because I don't have to do anything with it. If I can connect my life to these people, then it starts becoming very interesting.
Connect the hunger with what happened.
Exactly. So emotionally, can you see how hungry you are? Now imagine that these are people who don't have homes, they don't have food, they're dying of hunger, that's how they're feeling right now. Now we have video, now we have pictures, something that connects them. Okay, now I can feel how they feel. Maybe a field trip, maybe have them see these people living in poverty. Things that make them really feel what they are learning. So if I can connect whatever I'm teaching them to other subjects or to their lives, I form many connections outside of the topic or outside of the subject that really helps my students later. Okay, now we're going to do a little exercise first, then we're going to take a break. Okay? At the back here, the last 4 pages, you'll find the VAK test we did before, learning style test. Okay, I don't want you to do it now. We're not going to do it now. However, you can use the back of one of the papers if you want, or your notebook as you like. What I want you to do is the following. I want you each to choose one topic, one lesson that you have already taught this year. Okay, and hopefully something recent, something from last week. And then add to it how you would use outside connections. Something you haven't used. Don't tell me what you already did. Think of something new. Of the lesson that you taught without connecting to the students' lives or to other subjects. And give me 3 points, just 3 points. How you would connect this particular topic or this particular unit, chapter, whatever, to other subjects or to their lives.
To other subjects?
Or to their lives, either. Whichever you want. Okay? 5 minutes. Fair enough?
Fair enough.